Marco Sturm's system was on full display last night in Washington, and this is how the Boston Bruins are going to continue to win games this season.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Thursday, October 9th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. And on today's show, we're breaking down how Marco Sturm's system looked in action as Boston opened the season with a 3-1 win over Washington. We're going to dive into the stats, storylines, and significance of the victory. And we'll also preview tonight's home opener against the Chicago Blackhawks, including your Bruin of the day and some key players to watch. Before we get into all that, quick reminder to please subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app if you have not done so already. Helps the show grow, keeps you part of the everydayer community. You can also follow along at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I'm a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for various outlets for going on 20 years now. Locked On Boston Bruins is your daily guide to all things Spoke to Be. And again, last night, Marco Sturm's system was on full display in his debut victory as Boston Bruins head coach. The Bruins didn't just beat the Capitals, they executed their new identity to perfection. You could also argue they survived, as we'll look into the stats and see how the numbers weren't necessarily in their favor, but they played disciplined defense. They got some timely goals, goaltending excellence, and this is how the Boston Bruins are going to have any shot of winning more games this season. The Sturm era began with a win built on structure, sacrifice, and goaltending. The Bruins didn't dominate possession by any stretch, but they did dominate the details, and that's what was the separating point. Marco Sturm became the first German-born head coach in NHL history to win an NHL game, and he did it his way. Boston played a patient, layered defensive game that really frustrated Washington from start to finish. Washington was a team that perhaps overperformed last season. You had that historic season from Alex Ovechkin. You had Alexi Protas, Connor McMichael, Dylan Strome, Pierre-Luc Dubois, all perhaps playing over what is expected of them. And the Bruins were able to stifle them and, start that regression process for the Washington Capitals. Sturm said it felt great. He was exhausted after the game. The guys played exactly what they've been working on in training camp and exactly how he wanted them to play. And that quote kind of says everything. The Bruins collapsed into the slot, cut off seams, relied on their structure rather than chaos. It wasn't flashy, not necessarily going to be the most entertaining team to watch this season, but it was clinical. It was textbook Sturm, and you can already see his fingerprints. Support in the defensive zone, smart wall play, quick counterattacks through the middle. So Sturm's imprint is one of the big storylines from last night. Another one, of course, being David Pastrňák, the producer and playmaker. He led the offense with a goal and 2 assists. That first line of Pastrňák, Elias Lindholm, Morgan Geekie, basically contributing all the offense last night. Pastrňák now has 17 career points in season openers, passing David Krejci for third most in team history, behind Ray Bourque, that is, who has 30, and Johnny Busick, 18. So as early as next season, he could become the second highest scorer in season openers. His goal came midway through the second, a wrist shot through traffic after Elias Lindholm parked net front, which is exactly what his role is. He said he was shooting for Lindholm's stick for him to tip it, but he created the screen and it just went in. He later assisted on Lindholm's go-ahead power play goal. Yep, that's right. They scored on the power play 38 seconds after Washington had tied it. That's significant because how many times last season did the Bruins allow a goal and then just completely fall apart, or score and then allow the opposition to score again within a minute? This time it was the reverse. Washington scored to tie it. 38 seconds later, Pavel Zacha with a fantastic breakout pass to Pastrňák, who fed Lindholm, and he had an absolutely beautiful move to get the 2-1 goal at that point. And then Pastrňák later helped seal the game by setting up Morgan Geekie for the empty netter. His play away from the puck also stood out. Pastrňák's did. He had an active stick in the neutral zone, quicker backtracking, signs of a superstar fully buying into Sturm's vision. Of course, another huge storyline last night was Jeremy Swayman. He faced 36 shots, turned aside 35 of them for a .972 save percentage, including multiple grade A chances on 5 Washington power plays. The penalty kill was outstanding last night. That was something that definitely needed to be shored up. The Bruins special teams played a huge role in this one, scoring on the power play, not allowing them to score on their own opportunities, taking 5 penalties. We could dial in the discipline a bit more, but Jeremy Swayman was calm in net, looked completely dialed in, and it was a 2+ goals saved above expected performance. Something they needed to build on right away, Swayman said, sticking to their roots, blocking shots, and making great reads. And he gave the Boston Bruins exactly what they needed. A rock-solid start behind a structured, but let's be honest, still kind of learning system. The Bruins were kind of badly outshot and outchanced in this one, right? The underlying numbers should suggest Washington had a upper hand last night. The shot attempts in all situations were 81-36 in favor of, 81-53, which is a 39% share for the Bruins. Shots on goal, 36-21. Scoring chances were 39-18. 16-5. High danger chance advantage for the Washington Capitals. And expected goals were 4.3 to 2.47. Now, certainly, the Bruins gave up a bit by taking so many penalties, but at even strength, it wasn't much better. And at 5-on-5, Washington had 14 high danger chances compared to the Bruins, who only had 4. Washington had twice the expected goals, 3 times the high danger chances, controlled over 60% of all shot attempts. But the Bruins' defensive layers, and of course Jeremy Swayman, turned high volume into low quality looks. They also blocked 23 shots and tied Washington in hits, and then of course went 5 for 5 on the PK while scoring once on 2 power plays. So Boston, this is kind of their formula for success. Surviving extended defensive zone time, winning net front battles, converting on the counterattack. They didn't win because they were faster or more creative. They won because they were smarter, more structured, completely committed to the system. And as a final line of defense, Jeremy Swayman stood tall. They didn't win the analytics battle by any stretch. They won the execution battle. That's Marco Sturm's blueprint. And coming up, we're going to discuss the significance of this victory and how Sturm's blueprint unfolded in real time, what makes it different from last year, and whether this defense-first identity is sustainable. The NFL season is well underway, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right, pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. People love how FanDuel gives them so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, even follow live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Please do subscribe if you have not done so already. Tell a Bruins loving friend about the podcast today so we can build this community. So this wasn't a perfect performance last night for the Bruins, but it was, let's say, proof of concept. Marco Sturm's system will live or die by structure, Swayman, and special teams, and in game one, all three delivered. Last season's Bruins, first under Jim Montgomery and then a bit under Joe Sacco, tried to stretch the ice and play fast, and it often backfired. This team is different, though. Sturm's Bruins are layered. The first forward pressures, next two collapse low, defensemen hold tight gaps but don't chase, pucks are chipped out safely rather than forced east-west. It's predictable hockey. That's kind of the point. Predictable for the players and hopefully unpredictable for the opponent. And the result is Washington got pucks to the net, but few second chances. And when they did, Swayman was there. Statistically, last night, Washington should have scored at least 3 goals based on shot quality. Swayman, though, shut the door on everything but one Tom Wilson wrister, and that save differential was the difference in the game. He wasn't just a goalie in this one. He was kind of a release valve for the system. And when Sturm talks about trust between goalies and defense, this is it. Again, this was not a perfect game for the Bruins. They did not execute everything perfectly. They did not keep the puck away from the net enough when it comes to shot attempts and high danger chances. But this is where you count on a guy like Jeremy Swayman to be Jeremy Swayman. At his best, he is one of the top goalies in the NHL. We saw that a couple years ago against the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers in the playoffs. And the defense, while trying to do their job, has to trust that Swayman will be there to shut the door. And that he did last night. The numbers tell us that the Bruins were outshot and outchanced. But they were +1 in special teams goals, 1 for 2 on the power play versus 0 for 5 for Washington. They were blocking shots, 23 blocked shots for the Bruins compared to only 11 for Washington, +2 in goal differential. Look, you can't sustain a sub 40% shot attempt rate forever. It's not necessarily sustainable for them to give up all those high danger chances, all those shot attempts, and be on the low end of the expected goals. But they executed. Everybody knew their role, and this can keep you in games until the offense finds its rhythm or other guys are able to step up. Last night, it was all three first-line guys involved in the offense. Lindholm's net front presence created the screen on Pastrňák's goal. Then he finished off that backhand beauty on the power play off two nice passes, one from Zacha to Pastrňák, the other from Pastrňák to Lindholm. Then Geekie added the empty netter, which was a confidence booster for a player trying to keep that top line roll and to sustain the success he achieved last season. They combined for 6 points, controlled 60% of expected goals when on the ice, despite the team being outshot overall. So the Bruins kind of traded high-octane offense for defensive reliability. It might not be pretty. It might not pay off every night. But as we saw last night, it's the kind of hockey that can win. Sturm's system works when everyone buys in. And especially when Jeremy Swayman looks to be elite once again. It's a one-game sample size, but the Washington Capitals were a force last season, and the Bruins were able to shut them down largely last night. Pastrňák, Lindholm, Geekie keep their early chemistry going, and again, the blueprint is so clear. Structure, special teams, goaltending. This is how this team can climb out of the Eastern Conference basement. They're going to be okay with giving up shot attempts if the Bruins defense are getting in the lanes and blocking shots. They're okay with giving up some scoring chances if Swayman is going to be able to stand tall as the last line of defense. Now, giving up 16 high danger chances while generating only 5 of your own, there's going to be nights where you're on the other side of it and Swayman doesn't have it, or the expected goals become actual goals. There is some cause for concern in terms of those underlying numbers. But at the end of the day, it was the execution that matters the most. And the Bruins were able to execute where the Washington Capitals were not, and largely thanks to Jeremy Swayman standing tall. Pastrňák said it. He thought defensively they played a pretty good game. Any breakdowns, Sway was there. The chemistry for the first line really was nice to see. After finishing last in the East a year ago, the Bruins did look a bit faster, definitely more physical, more cohesive under Sturm. And look, I'm not going to lie, I spent most of last night watching the Blue Jays-Yankees game. And you can see with the Toronto Blue Jays that that team mentality can take you a long way. Games like this are going to happen. You're going to be outshot. But if you stay structured, stay tight as a group, and execute, that identity is going to carry you a very, very long way. I'm not saying this is a surefire playoff team because it's a long season. They're right back at it tonight against the Chicago Blackhawks in the home opener. We'll discuss that here coming up in a moment. But the early returns were very good for Marco Sturm and the Boston Bruins last night. And they'll try to keep it going tonight against the Chicago Blackhawks, a game we'll preview here as the podcast continues. Before we preview tonight's game, we got to name our Bruin of the day. There's no question in my mind. It goes to Jeremy Swayman. 35 saves, 972 save percentage. Remember last year, his season save percentage was like 892 or something. Plus 2 goals saved above expected. Perfect 5-on-5 on the PK, including a 5-on-3 in the second period. Rock steady behind a team adjusting to a new defensive system. If Swayman can stay at this level, obviously he's not going to have a 972 save percentage all season, but as the Bruins defense tightens up, he'll be able to give them even more confidence. Like, if they know that if they do mess up, he's there, then it will give them the increased confidence to go out there and do what they're expected to do. Swayman instead, all credit to his teammates. They stuck to their roots, made great reads, something you want to see early on, and he gave the Bruins confidence and gave Marco Sturm proof that his system can work with elite goaltending. It was a tone-setting performance for a goalie entering a very crucial bounce-back year. Now, he's going to get the night off tonight as Joonas Korpisalo is projected to get the start, second in a back-to-back. Spencer Knight will likely go for the Chicago Blackhawks. He looked pretty good in the season opener against the Florida Panthers with a 919 save percentage. Obviously, players to watch include David Pastrňák, Elias Lindholm, Morgan Geekie. On the other end of things, a bunch of former Bruins. Matt Grzelcyk will be facing Boston for the first time after signing with the Blackhawks in free agency after a PTO. You know, he's going to be motivated. Nick Foligno, Tyler Bertuzzi, Ryan Donato, among others, who will be looking to ruin Boston's home opener just for kicks. Of course, Chicago's focal point is Connor Bedard. He will likely match Lindholm's line, and he's going to be tough to handle. He didn't record a point, I believe, in the season opener, but obviously he's one of the best players, young players in the NHL. Frank Nazar did score in their season opener, so he's going to be a guy to watch as well. Obviously, it's early, but the Bruins 1-0, Chicago 0-1. The Bruins 3 goals per game. That ranks them 4th so far. Second in goals allowed at 1 goal per game. The power play 50%, penalty kill 0%, all of which doesn't really mean much because it was 1 game. But Boston special teams, that's a huge storyline for this season. The penalty kill was not good last year, nor was the power play. 5 penalties. Still, you don't want to see that happening game in and game out. David Pastrňák hooked Tom Wilson. Sean Kuraly, interference. Henry Jokiharju, cross-checking. Charlie McAvoy, tripping. Mark Kastelik, tripping. Like, the discipline needs to improve. Notably, Nikita Zadorov did not take a penalty last night, so good for him. The Bruins need to stay disciplined. Don't give Bedard extra room and free looks on the power play. It would be nice to see the possession numbers even out a bit. Build off the first win by reducing defensive zone time. Same layer defense, quicker zone exits, and of course they got to feed off the crowd. TD Garden energy can set the tone early, and a fast start for the Bruins tonight is crucial. The Bruins have a sharper structure than the Capitals. They had the special teams advantage. If they can replicate their system discipline from Washington, tilt the ice a little more, they should walk out 2-0 after the first 2 nights of the NHL season. But make no mistake, if the Bruins get outchanced 4-1 again, Connor Bedard certainly has the talent to make them pay. So overall, the Marco Sturm era in Boston couldn't have started on a better note. The Bruins went into Washington, blocked 23 shots, killed 5 penalties, leaned on a rock-solid Jeremy Swayman to grind out a 3-1 win that looked exactly like the kind of hockey their new coach wants to play. It wasn't flashy, not dominant in the underlying numbers. They were outshot and outchanced by a pretty wide margin, and that is cause for concern if it's going to happen each and every night. But it was structured and opportunistic. Pastrňák drove the offense with 3 points. Lindholm provided the balance down the middle. The bench stayed composed under pressure, and for a team looking to restore its identity after a rough 2024-25, that was the blueprint. Now the challenge is consistency and secondary scoring. Zacha did get an assist, but it was on the power play, playing with the top line guys. He, Casey Middlestat, Victor Arvidsson, who I believe hit a post last night, along with some of the third and fourth line guys, need to chip in for this team to have any more success. The Bruins return to TD Garden tonight for their home opener against Connor Bedard, Spencer Knight, Nick Foligno, Chicago Blackhawks, aiming to replicate the same commitment in front of their own fans. If Sturm's system tonight, Korpisalo, Pastrňák's playmaking continue to align, Boston could quickly remind of the rest of the league that structure wins in the NHL, and the Bruins are ready to climb back into relevance. That'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, your team every day. We'll be back tomorrow with full reaction to the home opener against Chicago, including storylines, stats, significance of everything that happens. Please follow the show on Instagram, X, YouTube at Locked NHL Bruins. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. For your second listen, check out the NHL Game Night podcast. Every game, every night, until the Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. And we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, your favorite team every single day.